Oops.
We'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Right, let's see. Can everyone hear me online? You can give me a thumbs up. Thank you. All right, cool. Well, welcome everybody to our September 7th Regional Water Management Group meeting. I'm going to try sitting down because it's more comfortable. And yeah, so hopefully we'll be here about an hour or a little less. So that's kind of what I'm expecting for today. Our agenda includes just introductions, public comment, any member updates. I'll do some quick general program and funding updates, and then we'll get into the meat for today, which is the project selection for our Prop 1 Round 2 grant. And so with that, we'll just do introductions of everyone who's in the room, and then we'll do everyone who's online. And so I'll go ahead and start. I'm Brendan Clark. I'm the program manager for our IRWM program.
I'm Joe Style, program manager for County Public Works.
Aline Villa with the Oceana Community Service District.
Kelly Dodds with the San Miguel Community Service District.
Mario Iglesias, General Manager, Level Community Services District.
Dan Heimel with Confluence Engineering Solutions here on behalf of the city of Mobile.
Nick Teague, Water Resources Manager for the City of Slow.
I'm Margaret Faulkner, Utilities Manager for Coastal CSC.
Rob Morrow with WSC here on behalf of Central Coast.
And Bill Clemens, General Manager of Oceano CSD.
Thanks. Anyone online would like to introduce themselves?
Hank Creasock, I'm a resident in San Simeon.
Hi, I'm May. I'm an engineer one in the county's water resource division.
All right, thanks. Any public comment or comment from members for items not on the agenda? All right, so we'll go ahead and move on. Just some real quick updates about the program and some funding opportunities that are out there that I think would be of interest to everyone today. And that is first, what we have before us today with the Prop 1 Round 2 funding is the last known funding for IRWM. And so I don't quite know what's next for IRWM, frankly, but no matter what that is, the county is going to continue to administer grants all the way to completion and through, post reporting, and everything's all closed out, even if maybe the program is dormant for a while at a state level. But we'll obviously continue on with administering what's open. And I do want to highlight that so the state, as some of you may know, has appeared to move away from bond-funded water projects and moving towards state budgeted funding opportunities. And I just picked the kind of the top 3 that are open and ongoing or coming up this fall. And that's the Small Communities Drought Relief Program, the 2022 Urban Community Drought Relief Grant Program, which are both funded by the state budget. So there's much less rules than like with a Prop 84 or Prop 1 grant. And DWR has been getting these funds out across the state for eligible projects. And then lastly, I just want to highlight that I think it's round 2 is what it's called, with the Sigma grant, implementation grants, that's coming out again in the fall. So if you're in a managed groundwater basin, there's another, I think it's, hundreds of millions of dollars being made available for Sigma implementation projects this fall. And I'll go ahead and post these slides online. So there's some links here as well. And that's going to be it for program and funding updates. Any questions on those before I move on? All right, cool. All right, we're we'll go to move on to the project selection for round 2. And so I'm going to try to go through this pretty quickly because some of this, if you've been following along these last couple months, it's going to look really familiar. But just quickly, our process for project selection is defined in multiple documents. And the first of those is our memorandum of understanding. So all of our 20-something agencies and organizations have signed on to this MOU, and it governs our many processes, how we make the plan, how and when we go to the board of supervisors, and it also lays out the process of our project selection. And it's defined in our MOU, and then it's summarized and kind of expanded on in our IRWM plan. And the main summary is here in this picture. So we have our members and our affiliates, our interested stakeholders and members of the public, and that informs our working group and our main RWMG. And so for projects, the working group recommends, does kind of the hard work, as I'll get into, in the scoring and project selection, and that flows into the main RWMG that gets checked by the RAC and then goes to the board of supervisors for kind of final okay and authorization. So this process is laid out here in our MOU. All right, and then also in the plan, we have specific requirements for selecting projects. And we've listed them here. We've kind of talked about these in the past. And the general process is, there's reviewing the state documents, soliciting the projects from you all, from all our interested agencies and stakeholders. And then it goes through the RWMG working group to the whole RWMG to the RAC, and then eventually the board. The board is the final decision-making authority. And we are here at step 5. So we've already completed our call for projects, our project showcase. We've had a working group meeting. The working group created a recommendation. Sorry. And now we're here at the general RWMG. All right. So some of the other guidelines for project selection come from the state, and the state releases these proposal solicitation package and guidelines. They're kind of parallel documents that we use and that the state uses to evaluate projects, make grant awards, and make agreements. And it shows it's a way for the state to show this is how we're aligning this program with Prop 1, which had its own set of rules and things. And I know this is blurry, but just want to show in the proposal solicitation package, the state has put out scoring metrics, and we have pulled the state's scoring metrics for our own scoring, which I'll go ahead and show here. And the last thing I want to mention about the state's documents is this new project selection process form. This is a form that not everyone is subject to. However, here in SLO County, we are, because we have what's called a cooperative agreement with the other regions in our funding area. And so just as a reminder, IRWM is not one big state bucket that everyone is competing against. The proposition assigned funds to 9 different regions of the state, and then you're competitive in your own region. And then we have the members of our region, like County Santa Cruz, Monterey, Santa Barbara, us. We have a cooperative agreement, and so the competitiveness of the grant now is passed down to us as a county. Which so there's some additional things here, like showing leveraged funding. Projects have multiple benefits, and so we had to have this in our scoring as well. So with the state guidelines and with these project selection process specific guidelines, the RWMG, we created this scoring metric for our grants. So it highlights the DWR scoring. This Assembly Bill 1249 contaminants is a specific score point from the state. And the same with leverage funds, is claim benefit logical and reasonable? Does it benefit multiple regions? Are you a small disadvantaged community? Do you have innovative technology? Like, again, these aren't points we made up. These are points directly from the state's guidelines. This is what they're looking for. Similarly, when it comes to our local project process, because we have to be competitive locally, we also had to bring in how ready the projects are, again, highlighting multiple benefits and if there is additional funding. And then based on our plan, we also could consider previous awards, geographical equity, and projects that are most ready. All right, and the last little kind of setting before we get into the working group results is what funding is available. So I mentioned we have a cooperative agreement with our other regions in the funding area. And these are all our Prop 1 grants we've had. And so we had a planning grant, we had a disadvantaged community involvement grant, which was planning funds, I think, for 6 different organizations. We had our round 1 implementation grant, which is underway. And now we have our round 2 implementation grant. And so you see the working group worked toward this $3.7 million with a minimum of about $500,000 for disadvantaged community. Prop 1 had a requirement that 10% of funds had to be set aside minimum for disadvantaged communities. So with all of that and the projects that were submitted, the working group met last week, and this was our agenda for the meeting. Wow, same kind of introduction, public comment. We finalized, I say we, the working group. I wasn't a voting member, so the working group finalized project scores. Then I did a little project selection process review. Then the working group selected projects and recommended funding for those projects for this entire group to consider today. Just a couple notes about the working group. The members were selected at the joint Water Resources Advisory Committee and IRWM meeting on May 4th. Our working group meeting was open to the public and streamed over Zoom. Many submitting agencies were present and answered questions related to the projects if those came up. And the working group did recognize some issues with the scoring and the project information form that was used. So I want to note, like NEPA, for example, the federal environmental process, we started noticing that some projects that were farther along and received federal funding then lost credit for receiving funding because they hadn't done NEPA, where a project that didn't have any funding yet hadn't had a NEPA requirement, and they ended up getting this point. So that was something they recognized and took into account when doing the recommended awards. And then as well as that, not all permits and easements and access requirements are the same. There is a difference between an encroachment permit and a coastal, conditional use permit, coastal development permit. So even though the point is 0 and 1, they weren't exactly, some things need to be looked at a little more detailed than that. So there's a couple of the conversations that the group had related to the scoring. And with that, here are the scores for the projects. So again, we had 6 projects submitted. I know it's been a little bit since we talked about the projects that were submitted. And then there's a 7th project for district staff to administer the grant. And so we had 6 projects submitted, and you can see them here: City of Morro Bay, Oceano CSD, our Flood Control and Water Conservation District, Pismo Beach, San Simeon, and San Miguel. And so we have the points here. There was 12 max, and we ranged from 10 points to 6. And then we had some notes about the projects, previous awards, ease to implementation, and how ready are the projects. And so a few notes here. The group recognized that San Miguel submitted a suite of projects, and that there was one project here that is, quote, shovel ready, where it's just an encroachment permit. CEQA's exempt. And so with this, the group worked through some various solutions and presents this funding recommendation to the committee, the full committee, for consideration. And so this would be City of Morro Bay, $1.2 million, City of Pismo Beach and Rio Grande and Grover, $1 million, Oceano CSD, 600,000, the Flood Control District, about 550,000. San Miguel CSD, even though it's scored lower, again, the group recognized that one of the projects submitted was quote shovel ready, and maybe on its own, or not maybe, but on its own would have scored much higher. And so they recommended a small amount of funding for that project, and then no funding for San Simeon's project, given the hurdles that are known for getting that project going. Didn't seem quite as ready to go. And so this is the recommendation from the working group for you guys today. And kind of some staff comments. This process is in line with the requirements of attachment 7. This is the local competitive process form I mentioned earlier. And just want to note that the RWMG as a whole, not the working group, is the decision maker for what is recommended to the board. And assuming a vote is taking place today, any agency recommended for funding, I'm asking to abstain from voting today. I hope you'd understand that. And so with that, I'll go ahead and take any questions, and I'll just throw up my our staff recommendation is that the RWMG recommend the working group selected projects and funding for the board to consider authorizing for the Prop 1 Round 2 application. So that's my presentation, and I'll go ahead and open up to any questions first in the room, and then we could open it up online. Any questions or comments about all of that? Yes, Aline.
Maybe I don't know, I missed it, the last meeting or something. I noticed that San Miguel, they were asking for a lot of money and they only got, what was the reasoning for that?
Yeah,
They
so
only got a small.
sure, the question is about San Miguel and their request for $4.5 million and being recommended for 300,000. So San Miguel had submitted, I think it was 3 to 4 different projects, like a suite of projects that totaled $4.5 million request. And one of those projects was a pipeline main, water main improvement that was $300,000, and it's farther along in design and doesn't need any special
So
easement
it's
permits.
readiness.
Yeah,
So,
it's on its own, that little piece was more ready and closer to completion, or not construction completion, but like ready to be constructed. And so the group pulled that one piece out. Like San Miguel submitted for a tank, a pump, a pipe, and all those can be constructed separately. They don't have to be constructed together.
I understand that, but being
Yeah.
such a poor community, where are they gonna get the funds so that
Yeah.
you're saying there's other resources for them?
Yeah, I would point to earlier, some of those other programs, funding could be available. And then also, this is like. a
I mean, I'm not from
competitive-
San
yeah.
Miguel, but I know.
No, I
this is
totally
bad in the
understand.
community, just like Oceano.
Yeah.
I'm happy with the Oceano one.
Yeah, being a competitive process, that's where I think the scores do matter, because we have to show that competition here. And so I think the group, by recommending the highest scoring projects for over 95% of the funds, also recognize that San Miguel has a need and has a project that's ready to go. Wanted to recommend some support for that community, even though it didn't score as high. There's some working group members here. I think they're nodding their head saying I categorized that correctly. But hope that helps. So it's still a competitive process. Yes, Will.
I apologize if you said this and I missed it. When do these funds have to be expended by, and what's the anticipated schedule from here on? Because the first round,
Yeah,
we were waiting a long time for our agreements.
yeah, the first round agreements took a really long time. I think just kind of all around state, and even a little on my side. But I think this will be much faster. I do, because the state's already posted the agreement template, and they have said that awards are going to be made much quicker for areas that have cooperative agreements. Again, because we're doing the competitive part here. They're gonna check it over and make an award. So I expect the awards to come a few months after our application submitted in February. And I'm hopeful we could have agreements done by the end of the year. Yes,
And then they have to be expended by,
it's gonna be at least 3 years after that. Yeah. So you looking into 2026 to have the funds spent and maybe longer. Any other questions or comments in the room? Yes.
Another question. You said there was a minimum, I think you said of $500,000. Is that for or per year or?
That's for the total application, the total of, so at least 500,000 of this 3.7 million that we have for our region had to be for disadvantaged communities. And this recommended suite of projects, I think, is at 900,000. So we will have that box
Okay, so
checked.
total.
Yeah, total. Any questions online? Or comments?
See a hand up from Jeff Edwards.
Yeah, Jeff.
Thank you. I just wanted to make some brief comments about one of the projects that's being recommended for funding approval to the Board of Supervisors. And that is the City of Pismo Beach's Central Coast Blue project, the phase 1 of that project. And I'm really curious how much the working group really knows about CCB. It's a fairly complex project. It's been in the works for a number of years. And I'm hopeful that the working group did not rely solely on representations made by the City of Pismo Beach. They've had a habit of being less than truthful on a number of matters related to this project. I hope you know that it's only 900 acre feet of water. The capital cost is over 50 million. It has a huge O&M cost because of the energy consumption. And the idea that this is a shovel-ready project or is being characterized as such is simply not the case. And in fact, the City of Pismo Beach and CCB, they don't have a place to put the water yet. Phase 1 included 5 injection wells, and I'm not sure they have even one of them tied up in terms of ownership, and they don't have permits on any of them. So this is far from shovel ready, this CCB project. And then we look at the regional aspects or the represented regional aspects. And the fact is that the Oceano Community Services District has been largely left out of this project. Now, they're non-participating members, but in the past, CCB and Pismo Beach has relied on the DAC status of Oceano to apply for and be awarded grants. And Oceano is not involved really. So for all those reasons, I object to any recommendation for a funding approval to the Board of Supervisors. And I think CCB really should be reconsidered by the working group and perhaps next Wednesday, that's the 14th of September, there's a joint city council meeting, AG, Grover Beach, and Pismo Beach, all participating members of CCB. There's a joint meeting at the South County Regional Center at 6 p.m. Hopefully some of these issues and questions will be answered, but I'm not confident they will be. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. I will just mention, at least for one of the comments, so you know, they in the application materials, the City of Pismo Beach did not rely on the disadvantaged community status of Oceano at all, and that did not factor into the scoring for this. So I just want to make sure you know that that did occur here.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, of course. Any other comments? I could go online or in the room. All right, and I guess that back up there. If there's no other comments, I don't know if members of the RWMG who are not recommended for funding in this suite would want to consider the staff recommendation.
Is that Mario?
I'm sorry, side word, I was preoccupied. I was just questioning, I think John, Rob's here for the Obispo Beach project. I heard Jeff have some questions and Rob, you could just kind of help out a little bit. And give us an idea of, maybe respond a little bit so that we can address some of these.
Yeah, so this is Rob Morrow with WSC, speaking on behalf of Central Coast Bloom. And so I think took some notes to try to capture all the comments, but I think probably the main one as far as no place to put the water. I think as we discussed at the meeting last week, the injection well locations are either within city of River Beach property, within public right of way, or at South San Luis Obispo County Sanitation District. We've had meetings with each of those agencies and gotten positive feedback as far as its location and the required permits for it. We don't have them in hand, but that's the plan, is to get them over the next 6 months. So we don't have any concerns as far as finding locations for the wells. And I think the other comment was as far as Oceano's participation. And as Brendan noted, we have not claimed disadvantaged community status, and Oceano is still participating in the project, just not as a funding partner, and as a result, not getting any of the supply out of it, but we're still in close coordination.
Oh, I'm sorry, again, I was not. But then, well, being on the working group, I'll go ahead and make a motion that the RWG, I'm sorry, the RWMG working group and so presented to the overall RWMG group as a whole, that we present the funding proposal from the Prop 1 Round 2 grant to the Board of Supervisors as has been presented.
Second.
Right, any comments under discussion? Right, I'll go by who's present in the room for voting, and again, if you're recommended for funding, ask that you abstain. So City of San Luis Obispo.
Yes.
Los Osos CSD.
Yes.
I'm sorry, it's impossible to hear. Could you just repeat the actual vote, Brendan? That would be appreciated.
Repeat the motion or the vote?
No, just the vote as they go along. It's impossible to hear.
Oh, sorry. So we're at City of San Luis Obispo was a yes. Los Osos CSD was a yes. Napomo CSD,
So yes.
yes. Oceano CSD, abstain.
Same.
Yep, thank you. And San Miguel CSD,
Abstain.
thank you. And that's who I have voting members present. That's who's present. So yeah, I can't vote for the county, so.
So folks online.
No. Yeah. All right, so the motion carries. That's the way it is.
Right, right. No, it's just unfortunate that more members didn't show to either voice their opinion or
Yeah.
cast their vote. Just seems the working group is only votes that.
Yeah, it's definitely, our quorum is 3, and so
It's kind of our team.
it's, there's people who've come in and out of participating and I think maybe just because they see the program winding down or they don't see any personal benefit, have less involvement. So appreciate the working group and putting in the time, even though they didn't submit projects, but put in time to help move this round forward. So I really want to thank the working group for that. And then, so with that, moving forward, agencies that have been recommended for funding will get some outreach from me regarding adopting our IRWM plan if they have not yet adopted the plan, and helping fund our grant application, have a cost sharing agreement for that. The Water Resources Advisory Committee will, I'm planning to have that on October 5th to consider supporting this application. We'll be to the board later this fall, and then the application is due early 2023. And any other questions or comments in general before we call it a meeting? All right. I'll just thank you, everybody. And, those who are moving forward, just keep an eye out for some emails from me, and just thanks once again. Till next time. Thanks, everyone online.
I know.